Welcome back. So, in the last chapter, we talked about the concept of money and how a central authority can create the system and maintain it. And there are some challenges with central authorities, but as I mentioned, they're not all bad. In a lot of cases, centralized authorities are very useful and can make things more efficient. But there are also a lot of places where these centralized systems have kind of outlived their utility, either at scale or they've just made matters worse. For example, we have big bureaucracies to handle land and real estate registrations. How about the DMV? Do we really need a central authority to control all the vehicles? Is there a better system? I mean, could we have a better system where you could transact and you could have commerce, but not have a centralized chief without a central authority? Could we do that? Now, if we take out the central authority, we would need to somehow handle like the creation, the distribution of coins, we keep track of the transactions, and we'd also need to hold people's currency. Like, how would that work? So in 2009, an anonymous person, so far it's anonymous, published a paper that described a system that did just that. Right? It was a system that could be used for person-to-person payments, or it was intended to be used for person-to-person payments without a central authority. Now, this system was blockchain, and its application was Bitcoin. So how does it work? So instead of one bookkeeper, the system said, let's have millions of bookkeepers, and they all have a copy of the book. Right? So we have a decentralized authority who can now create money, distribute the money, and hold on to the money for everyone. Wait, what? We had a problem with one guy, and now you're saying there's millions of bookkeepers. How does all that work? Okay, so it's a little crazy, but let's dig into a little bit and see how this system works in practice. So let's go back to our village. Okay, so say the blacksmith wants to trade with the fish guy. They agree on a price, and what they have to do now, remember, this is the new Bitcoin world that's in this village. Okay, so they don't have tokens, they have Bitcoin. So how would this work? So the blacksmith says, okay, I will give you three coins for your fish. So they agree on the price, and now what they have to do, they have to broadcast the transaction. They have to tell all these bookkeepers how much they want to move money, right? How much money they have to move. Okay, so they have to shout it out, and they have to wait for confirmation from all the bookkeepers. Now, each bookkeeper has a specific set of things to do. Okay, so each bookkeeper has to check his ledger and see if the person sending the money has enough money and if they've not spent that money before. Okay, so they have to verify that that transaction is good, and if the transaction is good, then all of them will update the ledgers, their own ledgers. Remember, each bookkeeper has a copy of the exact same ledger, so they have to update their copies, and then they have to confirm that this transaction is good. Once the transaction is confirmed, now the fish guy can hand his fish over to the blacksmith because he knows he's gotten the money. Okay, so that's how the system works at the high level. So who are these bookkeepers and why do they do this? Like, what's in it for them? For that, we have to dive in. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So in the Bitcoin blockchain system, all the bookkeepers are in a clever little race. Okay, I'll describe what the race is. Now, whoever wins, whichever bookkeeper wins the race will get a reward. Okay, so what is this race? Now, this is where we get into a little more detail, but this stuff is core to understanding how the blockchain works. So stick with me here. The bookkeeper competition or race is to see who can finish a certain set of transactions first. Okay, and these transactions that these bookkeepers have to do, I'm sorry, these tasks that these bookkeepers have to do, there's actually some useful work. Okay, so this is what they have to do in this race. Now remember, when the blacksmith had to trade with the fishmonger, he had to broadcast the transaction, right? Now there could be millions of people wanting to trade goods for money, so they've all broadcast their transactions. Now, all these transactions are put in a pool. Okay, so the first thing a bookkeeper has to do is pick a bunch of these unverified transactions. Okay, and then they have to verify if the sender of the money has enough money in their accounts and all that stuff, right? So they have to do some validation. They have to make sure the right person's sending the money. Once they've done that, now they have to solve a specially constructed math puzzle. Okay, there's a reason why they have to do that, but it's a little too in depth for this presentation. But let's just say that there's a special puzzle that the bookkeeper has to solve. Once the bookkeeper has done that, he has to immediately tell all the other bookkeepers that he's finished it. He has to raise his hand and say he has to finish it, and then he has to show them the work. He has to show that he has validated these transactions and he solved the puzzle to all the other bookkeepers. Now, all the other bookkeepers will verify that the work was done correctly, right? And they all have to agree that this person is the winner. Okay. Once the winner is selected, then all the bookkeepers will update their books with the transactions that are verified. Right? So that's step 6. Now the book itself that all these bookkeepers have, or ledger, is a special software structure, right? So the transactions are written into blocks, special blocks, think of them as pages, and then these blocks are then tied together in a chain, right? So think of each page being linked to the previous page that was written. Now this structure is what's called the blockchain, okay? And then the last step is, whichever bookkeeper won the race now gets a freshly minted brand new token, right? Now this is how money is created in this system, right? They get this token because they did some useful work for the community. In this case, the useful work was to validate the transactions and help people transact. Okay, now if you recall in our village, in the last chapter, the chief required proof of work to get new coins, right? So you had to prove that you did some useful work for the community, and then you will get a brand new coin that you can then exchange. So that's exactly what this is, right? So the bookkeeper did some useful work, proved that he did some useful work, and got a brand new token that he could spend. Okay, so we've covered the basic concepts. Hopefully, it wasn't too in-depth and too technical. So let's weave all this together. So as I mentioned, the distributed ledger, or the book that all these bookkeepers have, is what's called the blockchain. Right? So if you hear the term blockchain, think of a distributed book, a copy of the book that everybody has. Now the bookkeepers themselves are not humans. You probably already know that. Each bookkeeper is a computer, or specifically is a program that runs on a computer, right? And these bookkeepers are also called Bitcoin nodes, or nodes, okay? Now, the job of verifying the transactions and solving the puzzle is the proof of work, right? So you do proof of work, and then you can get a new token, a brand new token. The token itself, there's various names for it. In the Bitcoin world, it's obviously called Bitcoin. Then there's Ethereum and Ripple and so on. Now, bookkeepers who earn rewards are miners. Actually, all the bookkeepers refer to themselves as miners. So if you hear the term miners and mining, that's what it means. It's bookkeepers for the miners, and the act of mining is the act of verifying and trying to get a reward.